What do you do when you're a firefighter and a fire doesn't burn you, but burns the assets, burns the market? What do you do and how do you handle things? I can't wait for you to meet our next guest, Mike and Caroline Neubauer, because literally they went through this. The wildfires of Maui and the subsequent changes had just been one thing after the next thing after the next thing in real estate and how you survive hard times. They share a lot of amazing truth and it's an uplifting story. I want you to join us on the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, where Christy Candle and I talk to Mike and Caroline Neubauer.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm Christy Candle, one of your co-hosts. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their own community. And I'm joined with my co-host, Eric Stenbakken.
Hey, that's me. And some of you all don't know this as a listener, but I used to be a commercial photographer, commercial advertising photographer before I got into real estate investing. And that is something I share in common with our guests today. Our guests are Mike and Caroline Neubauer, and they join us from Maui, where it is morning still, and it is in the afternoon where Christy is. It's the middle of the day where I am. So we are all over the place. We are so glad to have you join us. And before we started rolling, we were trying to figure out, how did I get to know you guys? Because I know Mike and Caroline. I've been to their house and they are super gracious hosts. So thank you for that. But I was like, it's probably through the Better Life Tribe that we were all at some point involved with. And as it turns out, I overlap in a bunch of ways with Mike and Caroline. I'm an agent, although I am not part of the Lady Aloha team. If you're watching this video, no mistake. Okay. And I've been a photographer, and Mike has done some photography. And if any of you out there have been a professional photographer, you know everyone's a photographer, right? And then I saw Mike's book. I'm like, no, he's actually a photographer. He has a beautiful book, coffee table book on Maui. And I don't know if it was that book, Mike, or something else that has gotten you a master photographer designation, which is not a small thing. That's a big deal. But we're glad that you're here. So tell us a little bit about what's going on like right now with you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us, first of all. Right now for us, gosh, we've got a million balls in the air, like most people probably, right? But we're excited because we have, like you, we host a podcast. And that's been so much fun, getting to know different entrepreneurial couples and kind of what makes them tick and where they're going, what their purpose is, and little takeaways that we can get from each of them to implement into our lives to be the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, Mike and Caroline host a podcast that they started, I believe, Mike, wasn't it like exactly the same time we started this one?
Yeah, right at the beginning of the year.
I mean, I think it was within days of each other that we launched these things.
Awesome.
And one of the things...
Congratulations on hanging in there.
We did it. We stuck around.
Yeah, so the name of their podcast is Our Family Invests. And you can find them at ourfamilyinvests.com. They're on YouTube like we are and on all the platforms. And one of the reasons they are our guests is because I've skipped around in some of their content and they tell the truth. They are not just the sunny side up real estate investors. They're talking about real world. This is the good, the bad, and the truth about life and investing and so on. And that's why they're our guests, because things happen. But you didn't start off as real estate investors, right? I mean, Mike, you were a firefighter for a while, and Caroline, before you got into this. So tell us, what was the pre-investing Neubauer?
Yeah. So yeah, you touched on a lot of that already. So I was a firefighter for 10 years, and that kind of segued into real estate investing. But before that, I went to school right down the road from you. I went to the Art Institute of Colorado, and I studied graphic design and photography, and I ran a branding and identity company. You mentioned the Master of Photography. I got that through the Professional Photographers of America. So that came mostly through competitions. I won a lot of international photography awards and things like that. And then in 2021, they bestowed me with a Master of Photography distinction. That was super awesome. I really appreciate that. But yeah, before real estate, I was a firefighter. She was a hula dancer turned stay-at-home mom. And yeah, we just started learning as much as we could once we got that first taste of passive income. And it's been a roller coaster ever since.
So Caroline, I'm going to ask you about the hula dancing, because some of you don't know this, is that I went to high school in Hawaii for a few years, and I'd see the hula dancing, and I thought, oh, that looks pretty easy. It's smooth and graceful. And the older I got and the more I knew about physical activity, the more I realized if it looks easy, it's hard. Tell us about this.
Their training. Yeah. So I got a taste. I've always wanted to dance hula since I was a child, and I got to do it as an adult. I started out at community classes, and then I joined a halau that was more performance based. So we would do corporate events. And so I got a taste of that. And then I joined a more traditional halau, which participates in Merry Monarch, the largest hula competition in the world. And that's invitation only. So, I mean, at some point, they're training 5 to 6 days a week for competition. And yeah, it's definitely a hula lifestyle is encompassing in itself. But it's great because you get cultural bases, you get to really appreciate culture and awareness for the place that we live in and the Aina and all that it offers. And obviously you learn discipline as well, where you get cut from the line. So yeah, so I've gotten to taste a variety of the aspects of hula in the Hawaiian dance as well as the Tahitian.
Yeah. And if you guys have never seen the difference, there's a difference. But I imagine that I'm not a hula dancer or a yoga practitioner, but I've worked with yoga practitioners as models. And it's one of the things that I've realized about them is that their physical discipline is so incredible. It's like no other thing that I've worked with. It's probably like yoga looks easy and then you get to doing it. I had a first assistant once, Mike, who was a yoga instructor, and I'd be doing a little bit of a stretch and she said, okay, just do this one little tweak. And I go like, wow, okay, that's not the same. Looks the same, does not feel the same. So the discipline that you went into this, both of you, because firefighting is, I mean, you got to kind of be on your toes with that. You've got to be always training. The firefighters that I know are always training and they're always disciplining. And it is not a coasting type thing. People are like, oh yeah, just kind of sit around in the firehouse and cook dinners and stuff. It's like, yeah, some of that. So how did you take that? What was the inspiration to go from, and this is pretty far flung, right? Photography and hula and firefighting into real estate investing. How did you get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. They don't really align naturally.
Not on the face of it.
Not on the face of it. But, when I was in the fire department, we trained a lot, like you mentioned. And we started training as soon as we got there in the mornings. We had 24-hour shifts. And at 7:30 in the morning, we get in, we put our gear on the truck and we start training. And that training lasts till about noon every day. And depending on your crew and your captain and whatnot. But after that, we're basically sitting around the fire hall, cooking lunch, waiting for a call, those kinds of things. So we have time on our hands. And that's like 18 hours of time. So where most guys will find something to do, and it may be, watching TV, working out, everybody knows every sports athlete out there and all their stats and everything because the TV is on 24/7. I found myself learning and having the discipline because we had a library right next to the fire hall. I was constantly checking out books. I was constantly on podcasts. I was constantly just trying to better myself, right? And the basis in photography and graphic design helped me write my first book. And I did that while I was at the fire station. And so when we self-published that book and sold it on Amazon, we got the first taste of passive income. We'd wake up in the morning and there was a couple sales and we saw, look, your bank account now has $12 in it. Okay, cool. What's bigger? Right. And it wasn't long after that where I had a senior firefighter that I was paired up with who had been doing some real estate investing. And he was kind of treating it kind of as a hobby on the side. But what I saw was, man, you're making really good money here and you're just kind of going into it halfway. I was like, what if you went all the way in? Right.
Yeah.
And really kind of took that discipline. And for those watching this video on YouTube, you can see I am not a big guy. I knew that I wasn't going to make it to 65 years old as a firefighter. That is a physical job. And so I started getting all the data I could from this guy. And he mentored me and he helped show me like, hey, this is what's working. And so we got really clear about what we wanted. We started learning everything about real estate investing, networking with everybody there was to know. Got her on board by everybody's traditional way of reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. And, eventually we took that first step. So yeah, and
So,
it's been a great journey ever since.
okay, so I want to circle back on this just a little bit. So Caroline, I want to hear from you. As he's doing all of this stuff and he's talking about this new career thing, what were you doing at this time and how were you getting yourself into this space of like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm willing to take these next steps here, because at some point it's everybody's first deal. It's everybody's first time thinking about like, wait, what if? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I pretty much tuned that portion out for a good year and a half. And once he was still with it, I agreed to read the book, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. And it did do a mind shift for me. And then when a close uncle of ours, and he kind of was a mentor to us, encouraged us to add an addition to our house and not only add value, but have someone help us pay towards our mortgage, that's when we started to notice things really changing and happening. And maybe there was something to that. So that kind of got me on board. I've always been a supporter of what we want to do as a family. And Mike is a go-getter and he's a driver and a visionary. And so, after he was doing the research, getting me on board, then we decided to kind of map it out and go all in. And that's how it started, was putting all of our eggs that we didn't have in a basket and going for it and crying and sweating and learning through it, and then deciding to repeat the process, but better.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how did you guys go about deciding, okay, here's our buy box. Here's what we're understanding this real estate investing thing. How did you decide what asset class and what you were going into? Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Christy Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. And now I host the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast on all platforms.
Sure. Yeah, that goes back to that mentor that I had at the fire station. So he showed me what he had and what he was working with. And together we kind of put down something where we are here in Maui, right? Obviously, it's a very expensive market. But we saw what was working, and what was working out here in 2015, 2016 was short-term rentals, and they were crushing it. The problem is they cost a whole lot of money to get into. So we knew that we were going to have to leverage everything that we had in order to get one. So we wanted to make sure it was the right one. And so being a firefighter in Kihei, which is South Maui, I knew where all the skeletons were buried in every condominium complex on the south side of the island. I knew which ones were good and well managed. I knew which ones were bad and had issues coming through the roof, right? And so I got very, very precise about which short-term rental building I wanted. I wanted one that was hotel zoned. I wanted one with a lock-off feature so that I could separate it into two separate units. And so we've basically got down to the point where, hey, there's two complexes that make sense here.
I was going to say, it's a pretty small buy box at that point.
Small buy box. Only one of them is hotel zone. So now it's even smaller buy box. So some of them would come up for sale, rarely. But when they did, if they were decked out and nice and pretty and we couldn't add value, we didn't want that one. We knew we were looking for this condo complex. We were looking for a 2-bedroom unit with a lockout feature that smelled like cat urine. So when that one, when that one came up for sale, we pounced and we knew we were ready.
Nice. Yeah, Caroline, were you a licensed agent at that time?
No. So we did quite a few deals with top agents prior to getting licensed. And that just made sense for us, for our deals, for the knowledge, and for tax purposes. Mike actually signed both of us up, and then he ditched me and said that I liked people better. So that's how that came about.
Hashtag truth.
Okay, so that strongly resembles kind of my journey, is that I was doing it, bought and sold a number of those, and I thought, I want to know what's going on under the hood here. Like, what's going on behind the scenes, and how does this really work? There was less there than I thought there was, but in real estate education that I did, I learned a lot of the legal things. And that's what I found out when I took it, is that really this isn't about how to set prices and how to work with people, not getting the license anyways. That's the getting the license is the legal things. And some of those things have turned out to be very valuable. But interesting. So, okay, you started this and you started with a short-term rental and you get this going. Where'd you go from there?
Yeah. So once we started with that first short-term rental, we had, backing that up a little bit, we had spreadsheets that we would go through, and it was like, okay, we know this is what we want. Here are the numbers that we have to hit in order for this thing to break even, right? And we were as conservative as we could be, but we were also taking into account, well, I'm not sure we could afford cleaners for a short-term rental, so we'll clean it. And I don't know if we can afford handymen, so we'll be the handyman, right? So we considered all those things.
There.
Yeah, exactly. So when we got it, we were doing all the things. And very quickly, we realized, hey, we were right to underwrite conservatively. However, we're doing pretty good off of this thing. So the first thing, because we had a 2-year-old son at the time, was get rid of this cleaning thing. That's not happening anymore. Hire that out. Right. And so that still gave us the cash flow coming in that we just kept reinvesting. So we still had the W-2 and we just kept reinvesting all that into another bank account. And when we were ready, we got a partner and we bought another one. And we just kept that process going, slow and simple, right? But we just kept it going so that we built up enough of a portfolio where that cash flow was more than covering what our expenses were and more than covering what we were making at our W-2.
Yeah. And we set out like our goal after learning a lot through the first one and learning from our mistakes and costing ourselves money and time. We decided every 6 months we were going to figure out how to buy something within the next 6-month period in order to grow to eventually supplement the firefighter income. And we knew we had a certain date in mind that he was vested. So we put that in our phones as our goal. Like, we have to figure it out by this mark or we're going to have to get another job, because that's just what we're going to go into it all in. And so that's what we did.
Cool. So this is very driven by both a vision, the rich dad, poor dad, you could be your own boss kind of stuff, and real estate can help you. And the, hey, we see the kind of a finish line coming up. And once we cross that, we either go into another hamster wheel and we get in on that, or we have to switch, because we already did a podcast episode on the myth busting that real estate investing is not work. So you're switching wheels. You're not getting out of one hamster wheel and then coasting for the rest of your life.
Sure.
Otherwise,
100%.
you wouldn't be on this podcast, because we didn't even get to the juicy part yet. So it's going well. And then Maui short-term rentals has just always been awesome and incredible and no setbacks. Am I right? Or am I?
Well, that was right until about March of 2020. And if you're old enough to remember
then,
March
Mike?
of 2020, you will remember that we had this great pandemic, right? And so being in the illustrious
But
state
that was
that we were
great.
in,
That was great for short-term rentals, wasn't it, Mike?
not
That's
on
what I
Maui, it
heard.
wasn't. Yeah.
So
So
tell
at
us
that
what happened
point,
there.
Sure. At that point, our state shut down completely.
For 8 months, not a plane in the sky.
And we can see the airport from our back lanai. And we never saw a plane for months. And so obviously that does some damage to a tourist industry and to our rentals. And during that time, the short-term rental market had completely crashed out here. Everyone was trying to sell because nobody knew when it was going to open up, right? Nobody knew anything. We were just all speculating that this can't last forever. Because we were so disciplined about putting that money back, putting it aside, not using it. We're not buying Ferraris. We're just keeping it in the bank or investing it in something liquid, right? We had the money to get through, to go 8 months. Now that was difficult, but
That's
we were
long.
also very, very good at analyzing Airbnb's algorithm and figuring out what worked and pivoting when we needed to pivot. And so by doing that, we were able to keep a 73% occupancy rate through COVID when the rest of the state averaged 32%.
Or less.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's good.
And that was just to pay bills and keep the lights on. So, some of those nightlies were down to I mean, double digit dollars
Yeah.
per night. But those people also had the island. So the pivot with that was that if they could quarantine for 14 days, get delivery, then they would have the island and they would have a streaming deal for the next month or so. And so that just helped us stay afloat, but it definitely was not fun. And then we thought we saw the light, and then the Lahaina and the Kula fires happened. And that was another punch in the gut.
So for those who are not familiar with this, take us to that. And I don't want to make assumptions about this. I'm an investor on Maui also, okay, in a vacation rental. And so I have a little bit of feeling, my heart goes out for this thing, right? And I've got family with a place on Maui. And my first trip to Hawaii living there was in the mid 80s. And so I've more than just a couple days on the island, right? Hawaii is a different environment. As Mike and Caroline have been saying, it's like, well, we just had to pay the bills. If you've got a little quaint cabin up in Wisconsin, and it's like, we got to pay the bills on that, you might be thinking, a couple $100, and we got this taken care of. The AOAO, the apartment, their monthly dues, some of these are approaching $1,000. Some are more, some are slightly less. The property taxes are higher than you can imagine, okay? Just they're really high. So just to maintain these properties, paying the bills is not cheap, right?
No.
And so when Caroline says it's 2 digits, I mean, that's below $100. And $100 a night on these that are supposed to be north of 200 a night in the slow season. And for a 2-bedroom, these are supposed to be well into the 300s and 400s, right? So this is a big pivot. This is not a like, oh, well, we'll just kind of lower the price by 5-10%. This is massive, and this is survival, right? Mm-hmm. This is a big deal. Okay, so let's talk about the fires, because some people know about those, but some don't. And it's like a fire. Like, I mean, every place has fires, but give us a sense of scale relative to Maui and the economy of Maui, what this did, what happened, and what was the impact?
The impact is still being felt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with that, right? The scale is going to sound quite small. It was about 3% of our island that burned. The problem is it was probably the worst 3% that could burn.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make that sound any different than it is. Every part of the island is special and beautiful and magical. But Lahaina town was, at one point, it was the capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And it was a place that tourists love to go to. It was what was shown on every postcard. It was a magical little town. And that day, I can take you through the fires if you want to, from a firefighter standpoint.
Just briefly take us through that. Why this was such a big deal, because we get fires, mainland and stuff like this, and it's a little bit different. If you've walked Front Street in Lahaina, you would know that pretty much the entire street, with a few exceptions, is all made of wood, and it's all connected.
Yes.
Almost all of it. It's not your typical place.
Right. Yeah. So that day, August 8th of 2023, there was a hurricane that was passing just south of the islands. And earlier that day, a fire started upcountry in Kula. And that's about an hour or so from Lahaina. Granted, there's no traffic. Every firefighter that was available was up at that fire, every single one. So that leaves Lahaina side pretty much vacant. I think they had probably about 10 firefighters actually on duty in Lahaina at that time. The next closest station was going to be probably Kihei, which is 45 minutes away. During that, the hurricane is pulling winds from across our island. It's roping at about 80 miles an hour sustained. Every firefighter, like I mentioned, is up in Kula. Every hand on deck, right? Because that fire is massive and it's raging through Kula. Then a telephone pole goes down and it sparks fire in the brush just above Lahaina town. The winds take it from one house to the next. That spark lights up, an ember lights up a roof, lights up another roof, another roof, another roof. It was uncontainable from the beginning. The conditions were just horrendous that day, and there was no resources. So it burned over 100 homes, over 100 people lost their lives, right? And what happened after that fire is probably the most tragic thing that we've experienced since the fire, as far as our economy goes. And very quickly afterwards, we stopped tourism. We didn't want anybody coming in. And that rhetoric came out very quickly that, hey, Hawaii doesn't want tourism anymore. And it wasn't just we don't want it anymore. It was a don't come kind of thing. And not everyone was saying that, but some people did. And that caught fire too. And because of that, a lot of businesses had to shut down. A lot of people had to leave the island. And that's where we're still at. 2 years later, Lahaina is not rebuilt. 97% of our island is still here. And those businesses are struggling, right? And so short-term rentals have struggled since that time.
That's only one dimension of the short-term rental struggle, which is related to the loss of fires. Because shortly after this, it was after this. It was next spring. The proposal was put forward to remove all short-term rentals that were in apartment zoning. That's a complex issue. I can't unpack the whole thing right here, but there's a thing called the Minatoya list, which if your property was on that and in the apartment zone, this goes back into the 80s, then you were allowed to continue short-term renting. Well, it was proposed that they remove all of those. And that was like gas on the fire of don't come to Maui. There was the fires, and then it's like, hey, we need some space here to like figure out what's going on, mourn our loss, figure out what's next. And then when that came out, it said again, and in a different way, we don't want you here. We don't like tourists, stay home. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes. And that's the same years that Japan had record-breaking tourism, and Maui, not so much. And that bill is slowly meandering its way through, and it's changing as it goes. Still a work in progress, but that impacted tourism significantly also because I'm part of those groups, and occupancy rates is what makes us money. If you do long-term rent, you'll look at your vacancy rate, right? Well, we don't like to look at vacancy rates. That's just depressing if we look at it from that lens. And the vacation rental, and all of us on this, Chrissy has them, I have them, you guys have them, vacation rentals, we look at occupancy rates. But when those vacancy rates climb higher and higher and your ADR, your average daily rate goes down, that gets tough. So how have you all handled that? You said, and you wisely purchased in hotel zones and gave you some insulation here, but it wasn't a total insulation. Right? It's kind of like, well, I don't smoke, but the person sitting next to me in the taxi does. It's like, okay, well, congratulations, but you still have problems. Take us through that, how that next door zoning wise kind of bled over into your world.
Well, I mean, just backing that up, for better or for worse, the economy in Hawaii is based on tourism. Mm-hmm. And that is a much bigger, larger problem that should have been addressed 50, 100 years ago, that we would be in a different situation, but unfortunately we're not. So that's just what our economy is based on, and it has been greatly affected. As far as how it's come over into making wise decisions, calculated, putting money aside. For us personally, the hotel zoning, we in our growth and our scaling model with our personal goals, we always wanted to be more passive. And so we put it into property management, and that's 25% off gross. And so that cuts into your net significantly. And we had been self-managing prior to that with all of our rentals.
Well, I think, taking that a little bit further is when the fires happened and the rhetoric came out that we don't want tourism anymore. We saw, whoa, that's a red flag. We need that tourism. I get it. We don't want them here right now because we need time to heal. But at the same time, like this could destroy so many businesses. And I'm not talking about our short-term rentals. I'm talking about the real small mom and pop shops that are all over the place out here, right?
Which is mostly Maui. I mean,
which is mostly what we have.
Not Las Vegas. You don't have, 5,000 room hotels and stuff like this. It's just, that's not Maui.
No. So when we heard that rhetoric come out, we knew, okay, now's our time to pivot again. And we started selling off our short-term rentals on Maui. And we started moving to different things on the mainland, into syndications, long-term rentals, developments, all kinds of things, right? And we still have one property here on Maui. And like you mentioned, and we all knew it was coming, the tourism slowed down. And it slowed down drum. And at that point, we were doing so much to try and figure out how to get people in. We thought maybe the game has passed us by. Maybe the property management companies know better than we do. And so we hired a property management company to take on our short-term rental. And that's great for your time freedom. It is not great for your income freedom, right? And they didn't know any better than I knew. In fact, they knew worse. So our property has been in property management system, our property that we still have here on Maui, for almost a year. And it's been awful. The numbers are, you were talking about the cabin in Wisconsin analogy. Our holding costs for this one condo that we have, that we bought in 2019, our holding costs are $6,300 per month. Last month, we got a check for $16,000. That doesn't even cover our HOA fees.
So I live in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, which got annihilated by the Hurricane Ian in 22. And same thing, when all of your buildings are old, we're in a 10 to 15 year rebuild period, first of all, and tourism crickets for 23 and 24. And then you start to question, you're like, wait, I know I do short-term rentals in other places. Maybe the management companies do have a cheat code. No, thankfully I didn't end up going with one. But yeah, no, January through April, maybe. So my net is about 10K a month. And I frequently see in June through November, $600 a month. And it's a long recovery process. And you go, okay, I know if we can hold on long enough, it'll be worth it in the long run, but it's quite painful in the interim. But that's where building up your other assets and having stuff in other states and other markets can truly help. And that honestly has been my savior too.
Yeah. Yes. And I think this is just a moment to let's reflect here for a second on some of the reasons that we're all able to be here having this conversation, right? We're not sitting in cubicles, slaving over, an adding machine, kind of, I think it was an old Monty Python or something like that, where it looks like they're in a galley, like rowing on the adding machines or something like that. That's not us.
Eric,
right?
You're dating yourself right now. You're going to need to use a more current analogy, please.
Something newer. I'll leave that to you guys. But we're not sitting in cubicles. Okay. Yeah. And the reason we're not sitting in cubicles is because we've invested in real estate. And the reason that we're not investing in real estate and then broke and then back in the cubicles is because we all have some things in common here. And I'm hearing things like reserves. I'm hearing things like diversification. I'm hearing words like pivot and so on. So Mike and Caroline, I want you to share with us, how do you have those conversations about pivoting, about like, oh, wow, okay, this does not look good, because no one wants to be a wet blanket, right? So you don't want to say, oh, that looks like a problem. But at some point you have to say, that looks like a problem. We should probably do something about this. How do you have those conversations in a healthy way, both as real estate investors, but as a couple? Because you see each other when you go home, right? If you disagree at the office with somebody, you're like, oh, well, I'll get over it on my way home. Well, you are home. And these are the people you're going to see at dinner. How do you have those conversations, especially when things are hard?
I think having metrics, having the spreadsheets so that you know what's happening in your business and treating it not like a hobby and treating it like a business is foundational. And then it's not a surprise. We see the writing on the wall. We see what's happening, and being non-emotional with our properties and our investments. I don't feel like we have an emotional conflict in dealing with issues like that in pivots. That would be my take on that.
Yeah, I would just say we don't attack each other. We attack the problem, right? It's nothing that she did. It's nothing that I did. This is what it is. So let's look at it objectively, right? How can we right the ship?
And our goal is the same. We have a shared goal. And at the end of the day, we want to be successful. So how do we continue that success? And if that means a pivot, then it means a pivot. Yeah. So I don't think it's emotional.
That's super smart. And I know what Mike said, attack the problem, not each other. Sounds quaint. Sounds like it fits on a bumper sticker. I can't underline, though, enough how important that reality is, because it's too easy to shift into the person closest to you going like, well, I don't know, if you had said something earlier, and that is a spiral not going up. Okay, that's a spiral going down and it's just no good. So yeah, keeping your eyes on the problem is excellent. You mentioned keeping your eyes on your metrics, your goals. I mean, obviously we've got real estate investing goals. Pretty much everybody listening to this podcast understands what that is. But you said you have different goals, your family goals that are what is the why you're doing the real estate part. So tell us a little bit about those goals, how you make them, how you track them.
I think that's a matter of, us getting together and creating our vision. What's important to us as a family, right? What do we want to see from our son? How can we best align our family to get to those goals that we want to see for our son? How can we raise him the best way that we can? And how can we all stay aligned, right?
Yeah. And also our marriage, like we don't want it to be all about real estate because as great as real estate is, it is a tool and a vehicle for us. And so we look at it that way. It is not part of our relationship. It is part of our lifestyle and our identity goes beyond what we invest in. So when it starts to shift to that, then we probably have a reconversation to realign. And I think that's just been really helpful for us. And we work really well together. We're a good team. We complement each other in the different things that we do and the assets and value we bring to the relationship. But at the end of the day, our relationship is way more important and our family than a paycheck.
Yeah. And I want to reiterate that too by saying, we talk about our why, right? Our why is our reason for doing these things, whether it's your family or travel or experiences or your purpose, right? That's your why. The how we're doing it is with short-term rentals or with syndications or with long-term rentals or whatever. The what is the real estate. But that what and that how, that can change. The why doesn't change, right? So if we find a better how to get to the why, that's fine.
We're just doing what we know, what's in our backyard, what we've had experience with. And we're also growing all the time. Like we have a family coach, we have business coaches because we want to continue to expand. So are we there yet? No. Are we going to ever arrive into the full potential? I don't think so, but we're okay with that. And we continue to evolve. And so that's what's worked for us.
Okay. So I'm going to push into that just a little bit more. Do you have written goals for your family, for your relationships? And if you do, how did you have those conversations? And how do you track that? How do you know if you're on track or not on track? Because you can track on software, what's our rent, what's our vacancy rate, what's our overhead, what's our debt pay down. We have metrics for all that stuff.
Yeah.
But now you're starting to talk about things that matter more. But how do you keep a pulse of that?
I think actually Better Life and Brandon has opened our eyes to like the habit stacking because
so who's Brandon and what's Better Life? Okay, for those who might not know.
Where did you get that t-shirt?
Yeah. Brandon Turner, who like basically got Mike a lot of education through his Old Bigger Pockets podcast and all those connections and them being here on Maui, they've become good friends. But he started Better Life with the intention to have people live a better, fuller life outside of real estate investments, but with real estate as the focus. And so walking through goal setting and breaking those down into quarters, breaking those down into habits on how to reach those goals quarterly, that was new for me. I am not a natural goal setter, and I think a lot of people identify with that. But being able to track during the week, are you taking the steps to get to reach those baby steps to get to the bigger goal that will get you at the end of the year to where you want to be, or at least closer? And maybe you're not hitting it, but you're moving the metric, you're moving the needle. And if you are hitting it, maybe you're excelling it beyond what you thought was possible. So I think just like learning how to goal set. And sometimes that means hard questions on what is your why and what do you want and why do you want it?
Yeah. And like you said, Eric, it's very hard to measure the intangibles, right? The things that can't really be quantified. Like, is my son doing the things? Is my son the person we want him to be? Or what are the metrics to get him to that, right? It's not as easy as looking at your ADR. It just is
not a number,
right?
It's
just, that's a number. That is math. But what we can do is we can see the progress and we can go back to quarterly goals for us as a family of who we want to become. And are we making the steps towards becoming those people? And that is something that we can align with. And we do come up with visions for ourselves personally and for our family as a whole. And we bring our son into that conversation. He's 9 years old.
Yeah,
We
so
bring him into the conversation.
for a tangible example, like we wanted quality time as a family that was a family fun trip. That almost all of our trips the past 5, 6, 8 years have been real estate based. And so we decided it would be a fun trip and our son Nico would get to choose the trip this year. And he chose Japan. Well, Mike and I have been to Japan and it was not top of our list. However, that's what we gave him the authority to plan, to have input. And so we made that happen. And there were steps that we had to take, obviously the logistics of it to make it happen. But that was one of our goals. And we got to go in March for a ski Japan vending machine trip.
And by having him do that and having him go through the practice of helping to plan the trip, he becomes more and more of the nucleus of our family, right? And it gives him responsibilities and opportunity at the same time.
And value.
So when we finished this trip, when we got back from it, we all looked back and said it was one of the best trips that we had taken. Even though we had been to Japan before, we didn't anticipate it being as great as it was. It was such a great family trip. And it was because Nico was part of that planning.
Was that your first awesome snowboarding or skiing trip, or you had already done that before?
No, we actually have been taking him skiing and snowboarding every year since he was 2 years old. I think we went to New Zealand the first time.
Nice.
He loves
That's
it.
awesome. That's awesome.
I split my time between Southwest Florida and Lake Tahoe. So I'm back there snowboarding, and I started teaching myself how to ski during the boring days. So yeah,
amazing.
Good job.
I'm all about trips where you can ski, snowboard, scuba dive, play beach volleyball, do whatever in other countries and have an extra reason to go.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, this wouldn't be a complete podcast on the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast if I didn't touch on what inspired me to reach out to Mike and go, uh-oh. And so if I reach out and say, hey, you should be a guest on my podcast, I'm so sorry for you. But Mike he said, oh, here we are we just got the squatters out. I was like, wait a minute. What, Mike? We've talked a little bit and I didn't hear anything about this. What was going?
That's a heavy one.
Yeah.
We don't have to go into the whole thing, but just
long and short.
Yeah.
Long and short is vet your tenants, do things legally, do things the right way. Love my parents. They are very frugal. They didn't do things that protected them. So it is their unit in a hotel zone short-term rental complex here on Maui, meaning they pay $14,000 a year in property taxes alone, whether they rent it out or not. And they let this Christian man who needed help come in basically on a handshake 4 years ago, come November. And the first year he paid toward the bills. Their HOA is $800 a month. His electric bill was $200 a month. And for 3 years, he didn't pay rent. And so until I got power of attorney to help them, and they both have dementia now, it took going through the court system and getting pushed back. And we are a very tenant-friendly state. So even if he is not supposed to be there, you cannot turn off electric, water, or anything like that. And we just recently got awarded that he is no longer allowed to be on property. And so that was a very lengthy process. We've learned a lot. Please vet your tenants, pay the background check, get a lease in place. There's so many options to get one online. And then unfortunately, he also was part of a water damage leak to the unit below. And because it is not my parents, it is a guest, then the responsibility for insurance is denied. So we are currently working through that and a $68,000 bill from the unit downstairs.
So I think you should clarify that a little bit, because her father, my father-in-law, is the kind of person who is, like she mentioned, very, very frugal. And so he was not renting his apartment in his mind. He was letting someone stay there. So he never had a real lease in place. We don't know if there was anything or not, because once we heard what he was trying to do, he was going to get somebody that he met off of Craigslist. We're like, Dad, don't do this. Put a lease in place. Do this. You got to protect yourself, right? And he failed to do all that. No. I asked him if he was a Christian and he said yes. I was like, Dad, that is not the metric you want to go by for just putting somebody in. Yes, some Christians are great, but also some of them are not, right? So you got to do background checks. You got to do the things to protect yourself. And he did none of that.
And I have a license.
As a legal representative of the real estate system here, she is required to do certain things when she manages a property. So we're like, look, we can't know. We don't want to know. If you're not going to do it the right way, then we are hands off on this. Don't ask us for any help.
Yeah, it's unfortunately that's kind of how it has to be. It's like you either have to have the ability to control and steer the thing the right way, or you can't touch it. And a lot of people don't understand that. They just say, hey, how about you help me? How about you coach me? And the worst word is advice. Can you give me advice? Actually, no. Okay. So if you haven't engaged, like, and committed to a real estate agent, and they have that fiduciary duty to you and you're committed to them, actually, no, you cannot ask them for advice. And if they give you advice, it is at their own peril. And so this goes sideways to a lot of things we think about, that like treating it like a business, having a lease, doing the background checks sounds mean or uncomfortable or difficult. Actually, clarity is kindness. Following these laws is the right way to go, not to be the bad landlord, but it's for everybody's sake. And in this case, the unit below, it just goes on and on and on, how important it is to take the actual correct steps. And so you weren't able to, you kind of were watching this train wreck from a distance and you're like, oh my. But then I see a video and you're got a video and you're like, well, I'm walking around in the unit. I'm like, Mike, what is going on? How do you handle there's the tactical stuff and the legal stuff, and we can all figure that stuff out, right? But the mindset, how do you look for the light at the end of that tunnel and keep positive as you're dealing with stuff like this? Because if it's not a multi-year squatter, essentially, if it's not a wildfire, if it's not regulatory taking, if it's not a hurricane, it's something. Like we're all going to come, if you're staying this long enough and you've got enough assets that you're involved with, a train's going to come out of somewhere you didn't expect. Yeah. So how do you keep your head on straight? How do you, how do you do it?
I pray a lot, and I'm really grateful for Mike, because I think when it's our own assets, we have those safeguards in place. And obviously there's things that we don't have control over and we can pivot. When it's someone else's problem that you inherit, that is a different kind of drain, to be completely transparent. And there are highs and lows for sure. I think the blessing is that we don't go low at the same time. So when I'm low, he can pull us up, or be there, and vice versa. And if we both went low at the same time, it might be a completely different conversation. But yeah, I think also we are such planners and wanting to know what's next and what our exit strategies are. This has been a completely different ballgame for the last 5 months. And we are learning to take it day by day. We don't have any choice other than to be present, because there's always something new and there is always something explosive. It's kind of insane. But we might as well, we have to take care of it.
Your mind can go one of two ways if you look at the big picture, right? And most people go to, oh, this could be really, really bad. We could lose everything. But most people don't go to the other side, right? This could be really, really good if we do this, that, and the other thing. So what I like to do is, I'm a big fan of Eastern philosophies, and Lao Tzu once said a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So I just look at the steps. What step can I put in front of the next, right? And that's helped us to get to, okay, well, we need to file this. Okay, well, we need to do this. Okay, we need to do this. And those steps has gotten us to the point where we got the writ of possession from the judge. Okay, now we need to change the locks. Okay, now we need to get a crew in, right, to do demo. Okay, now we need to rehab. So it's just one foot in front of the next. And at some point, like we were saying before, the real estate market will turn over. And things, if you believe in the resilience of Maui, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, at some point, we will make money again.
Yeah.
Can we hold out? I don't know. But I don't know what tomorrow brings anyway.
Right. I know, right?
Right?
I got a Facebook message and a message directly from somebody else that said, oh, hey, this thing just happened. The TIG, we won't even go there, sent us this thing. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I did not see that coming. And so all of these things, both good and bad. And I think your point is an excellent one, is that by doing the next thing, we engage ourselves in doing something, which if we're busy doing something, kind of stops the process of catastrophizing. Like, this could all go, because if we sit doing nothing, that's pretty easy to go there. And there are ample opportunities in pretty much every space to go there, because disaster, the potential of it is right around the corner. And I'm just going to pitch a past podcast episode Christy and I did on news, where you're getting your news, and news makes money with catastrophes. I mean, how many major networks are out there going like, oh, this great thing happened today. Here's 30 minutes. You don't see it, right? You got to look for that on your Instagram feed and stuff like this, because disaster sells, right? We stay and we just wallow in it. And what I hear you saying is that's not working. It's easy to go there, but don't. You can't. That's not how you get out of it. And I, like you, am banking on the fact that it is Maui, because we said that too. We're like, well, how bad can it get? I mean, if it's Maui, it's still Maui. I mean, it's just at some point. And so I'm with you. We're going through that. Do you have any communities, books, groups? Do you have your own that you want to say, hey, this has helped us kind of keep it together? You mentioned Better Life Tribe and the idea of planning, goal setting.
Right now, we're in Mentor Family with Scott Donnell and Jimmy, and that is a really good foundational program. We're going through it right now to build roots for generational families. And so we're learning a lot on the family side of things, and that's been really great. So you might want to check that out. We're going through it right now.
Yeah, that's family related. It's not real estate related.
Yeah.
Real estate related, sure. We have lots of groups that we are a part of, right? We mentioned Better Life before. I have accountability groups that I'm a part of as well. We do a monthly real estate meetup out here
on Maui.
We've written a short book of how to get to financial freedom. It's free. Anyone can have it. It's ourfamilyinvest.com/fire. So we try and share as many resources as we can, and we try and learn from as many people as we can. What's working, what isn't, and what the pivot is.
Right. And that's just how we do it. And it keeps moving. I remember the first time I heard the content of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? I thought, well, that's a lifetime kind of book right there, because the cheese is always moving. This is just how it is. Thank you so much. And is there anything that you were thinking, man, I hope he asked me this, but that I failed to ask that you want to share?
I don't think so. I mean, you guys did a great job asking questions, and I feel like this was a very fluid conversation. So thank you for having us on. We really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, and I want to encourage you, our listeners, to check out their podcast, Our Family Invests. It's a very different kind of format that they have, and the content and what they're doing is different than ours, but also not so different in the fact that they aim for transparency and reality in what they're doing. But they are interviewing couples and families and relationships and how these things work together, which is a super common question that comes up in real estate. Well, I'm into it. I mean, I literally got it this week. Well, I want to do this, but my spouse doesn't. What do I do? Like, well, you and just about everyone else who starts, because it always starts with one, right? And then how do we do this? But I want to encourage you to do that. Mike and Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys.
And we appreciate that you're telling the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. If you like this and enjoy it, please leave us a review, share it with a friend, and join us again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.